All right, so I'm gonna voice some key alignment points and technique points in this video. It's just a constant flow. It's about 20 minutes, and I almost always have the kettlebell in my hand once I pick it up. So it's a good cardio workout. You could do each exercise for longer, but really I'm just kind of running through techniques and keeping a constant flow. Starting with warming up the shoulders and at the same time really thinking about the movement in my legs, my hips, my spine. Most of this video is ballistic movements, meaning you're swinging your bell. So even a fairly light bell, so the pink one is 8 kg and the blue one is 10 kg. Even a fairly light bell under momentum, the weight is magnified with that momentum. So start light and then go heavier as you get to know the complexities of these movements. There's a lot of different schools of thought with kettlebells. There's like CrossFit style, American style, Russian style. And I would say that my technique more closely resembles the Russian style because it's meant to be sustainable rather than short bursts. So you want to be able to have the bell in flight for a long time, a sustainable amount of time. Because at the Russian events, they'd be swinging the bell constantly for 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, depending on their competitions. I'm starting to warm up the spine, mobilize the spine, and something I guess I've gotten from my yoga practice is contrasting strength and stability with mobility. So my warm-ups before I pick up the kettlebell are a combination of heating up, so I'm doing some squats, waking up my knees, my glutes, thinking about alignment. But then you'll also see me do a lot of wiggly movements. So in between a strong set of reps, I'll move the spine and mobilize and arch and curl and twist. And it just feels best for my body rather than for the whole workout locking neutral and being kind of hypertonic. So cross-stepping is really good, especially if your squat is naturally externally rotated like mine is. So some people are happy hip width apart and neutral. But if you tend to be a little bit externally rotated, doing some cross-stepping, warming up the inner thighs. So notice how before I pick up the kettlebell, I really lengthened out my spine. And notice now as I'm just doing a basic two-handed swing, I'll point out that I'm throwing it behind me. At no point am I fighting the kettlebell. I'm just kind of keeping it in flight and managing that momentum. At no point does it lose momentum. Playing with one-handed swings the whole time as the bell is in flight and keeping it pretty high up. I'm trying to keep it above my knees. You don't want to let it hang real low. So the lower it hangs, the more you're going to round the spine. You're going to like curl the spine. So my wrist is pretty high up towards my crotch. I'm literally throwing the momentum off of my hips. Your head is like a counterweight. So as I throw the bell behind me, my head is like the opposite end of the pendulum action, of the seesaw action. So just warming up. That's a light kettlebell. So I just did a couple of swings, warm up that movement, and I'm just doing a couple of squats, wake up the thighs, the glutes. I'm really thinking about trying to keep my head, my spine in line. So I know internally the alignment point I'm thinking about is picking myself by my throat and really thinking about activating the deep neck extensors, which helps my whole spine stay nice in line. Just using the kettlebell as a little extra conversation. A little bit of resistance. So these are round the body passes, and I'm just demonstrating something that you can use to keep moving in between heavy sets. So these are super simple, and if you just did a ton of heavy swings, or you just did a more challenging movement, something that kind of gassed you out, round the body passes are something that you can sustainably catch your breath. So if your goal is to constantly move rather than stop and start, which is good too. But for example, my intention with this workout was constantly move, nice steady state, like a decent pace in a jog. So I'm going to switch up to my heavier kettlebell again. I'm going to set my stance. I'm lengthening out my spine. You're thinking of your hips as a counterweight. setting my neutral, and then loading my weight back. Now once the bell is in the air, I'm never fighting with the bell. So not that it's wrong, but the American style, the bell is traveling like towards the ground, like you're ripping it up overhead. It's more of a vertical travel. You can see the flight of the bell as it swings past my knees is more of a horizontal path. So it stays in constant flight. Notice I'm deliberately twisting a little bit with the one arm swings. It really helps me throw my free arm back as counter momentum to keep the bell feeling light and fluid. Warmed up a few of those and feeling the extra bit of weight, again, a little opportunity to wiggle out the spine, and doing a couple of heavier squats with the heavier bell. I'm flipping the grip here. And with a heavier bell, this is nice. I'm actually resting the bell on my collarbones, and I can use that as a conversation point. So I'm consciously driving my sternum up through the bell to help keep my upper spine engaged. If you can sink all the way down and relax at the bottom, that's nice to use the weight for a bit of passive stretching and mobility, and then reactivate, drive through the heels, squeeze up through your glutes as you come up to the top of your squat. Obviously, the core is stronger on the exhale, so I'm moving in such a way that I'm compressing my breath sharply. You can't hear the audio on the recording, but you can definitely hissing and popping my breath anytime I'm using strong, sharp movements like that. And again, round the body passes. This time, a different variation. I'm turning direction, so I'm pushing the bell back the opposite direction. This is a little more challenging. It's also a lot of fun. And just demonstrating another movement to keep the body in constant movement. Even you can catch your breath here, something tactile, spatially aware, giving me food for thought about stabilizing the legs, the core, managing the weight of the bell. And it is challenging enough with a heavier kettlebell. With 10 kg, you're thinking about managing that weight. Generally, when I put the bell down, I throw it away. Notice how I toss it away in front of me. And you can constantly walk as well. So if you just need to put the bell down, I'm rolling the shoulders, I'm looping my spine around, and just kind of massaging and noodling out. Do a lot of noodling in between the more strict alignment. So I'm going to come back to the lighter bell and progress the movement. So generally speaking, with the ballistic movements, anytime you're swinging the bell, there's a progression of complexity. So I did 2 arm swings, I did one-handed swings. And then I'm going to head towards, notice how my elbow is glued. So this is a progression towards a clean. And I call these T-Rex swings because I'm like T-Rexing my elbow right onto the rib cage. And notice how I'm kind of like ripping it back. I'm still not fighting the bell, but I'm not letting my arm just go with that forward momentum. So I'm contracting, stabilizing my shoulder onto my rib cage, using my bicep to kind of rip it back. This is really good for jiu-jitsu, really yoga relevant as well to keep those elbows glued in. We do a lot of that. And now I've progressed from T-Rexing the elbow to bringing it to a clean. So it's resting racked on my rib cage. You can't see it on this side. You'll see it as I switch it to my left hand. But when it's resting, my thumb is right close to my collarbone, so the bell is not dangling out in space. I'll go over that more specifically in another video. But notice how the weight of the bell is resting on my arm instead of kind of loosely hanging behind me, which I see a lot of people do when they aren't aware of where the bell should be. So it should definitely be parked on your arm, and your thumb is towards your collarbone, so your arm's kind of folded in. And again, I threw the kettlebell away, so at no point am I trying to stop a bell in flight. I'm always cooperating with the bell when it's in flight, noodling around in the spine, getting nice and long, make sure I'm really happy with my neutral spine. And then as I rip it back, I'm going to do the same movement with a heavier bell. Notice how I'm slower with that larger object. Really mindful, keeping that T-Rex arm, keeping it nice and close. Just demonstrating the progressions of movements. Going to do a few on one side, a few on the other. Then bringing it to a clean. So I'll share in another video how to flip the bell over your arm without giving you massive bruises on your forearm. But you can see how the flight of the bell, as it goes from hanging down from my knuckles to coming to the back of my arm, it's not a big dramatic swivel and then bang onto the back of my forearm. And that's helped by twisting my forearm. If you watch my forearm, I'm twisting it a little bit. So the bell just falls to the back of my arm rather than having to do like a full orbit around to smack heavily on the back of my arm. And I'm really taking the time to pause at the top. And I throw the kettlebell away. Again, I just walk and move around. So at no point am I not thinking about my movement, but there's a couple of gentler points where I recover the breath and again wiggle out the spine, which when you're lifting personally, maybe it's the yoga influence, a little noodling in between holding a tight neutral. The next day your spine will be awesome. You don't have that heavy locked feeling. I feel like a lot of people that do a lot of time stabilizing their core in neutral, then it becomes hard to leave neutral. So again, I'm starting with the bell well in front of me, pulling in my hips back, lengthening the spine like a slingshot. So I already have loaded momentum. And I never have to fight the bell once it's in the air. So I'm just playing, really trying to decide whether I'm going to do some snatches right away or not. Just feeling it, constantly checking with the action in my legs and my core and my spine, making sure my spine's straight. Notice the little rotational twist with the one-handed swings. Clean, and then overhead press. Clean, swing, clean, overhead press, clean, swing. And anytime I stop, so when it's parked on my forearm and it's parked overhead, there's no momentum. So when you get tired, you know, if you start doing these movements for a long time, it can get really loose and uncontrolled. So in your head, you're thinking about, is it in flight or is it parked? And when it's parked, there's no movement. You're dead still. Still, still, swinging, swinging, still, 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 swinging. So there's clear delineations there. So we've progressed from two-handed swings to one-handed swings to little T-Rexes to cleans, and now putting a little overhead press on top of the clean. And with the overhead press, you have a couple of options. You'll notice I'm giving my body a little bounce. There's a subtle little bounce in the knees to help me pop the kettlebell overhead. You can be a little more strict and lock out the legs so that you're just using your arms. So here I've switched to the snatch, which is one of the more challenging overhead movements. So I'm not fighting the bell, but I'm guiding it up overhead and parking still. Still. It's in flight, playing with it, still. And I'm deliberately twisting, noticing the weight is swiveling around behind my arm so that I don't have to lob it around and smack the back of my forearm. Trust me, you'll give yourself a nice little bruise if you're not conscious of that transition. Personally, I like to open up my grip at the top and really shoot my fingers to the sky. I feel like I get more upward intention. Some people keep their grip closed, but the more you death grip the bell, the more you're going to give yourself blisters and calluses. So just thinking light with your hands. Again, I threw the kettlebell away, a little noodly moment in between really managing the weight of the bell, catching the breath, still in constant motion. And I'm just kind of mentally thinking about snatching the 10 kg, a little twisting side to side. I'm reaching for the bell. I'm going to keep it, notice it stays fairly far away. Pulling the hips back. Setting my neutral spine. And you can see how it's much heavier to fly. There's a shorter flight path. The heavier the bell, the less arc through the air you'll probably have. Park, swing, park, 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 swing. It takes a lot of concentration. So again, this is a demonstration video. There's a lot of skills in here, which I'll cover another time, but these are the kind of progressions that you'll see in my kettlebells practice. And it's really fun. It's a fun way to constantly keep moving. It's very technical. It's very strong. Definitely heart rate is up by now. Single arm swing, to clean, to press, back to the clean. I'm keeping the elbow pretty tight when I'm thinking about cleaning it. Notice that spin. Practicing on the grass is lovely. Practicing barefoot really for this is great because you want to feel really rooted to the ground, more intelligent your feet, more intelligent your shins, your legs, your core. Squishy shoes are going to kind of work against you because you don't really have the proprioception, the awareness. You're not going to be half as stable. So with all these ballistic movements, I would say most beginners, and including myself when I started, I really gave myself some low back pain. And that was because I was fighting the bell. When you throw the bell behind you, don't fight with the bell. So I'm just letting it throw, and I'm returning that movement back. And you really got to exaggerate. Like, I may not look like it right now, but I'm really swinging my butt back. It's like I'm trying to smack myself in the butt with the kettlebell. You're really letting it swing back. You get free energy returning it forward. So throw it back, free energy, swinging it forward. Nice little snap of the glutes to get the kettlebell up overhead. Still, it's parked. I'm really concentrating on eliminating any loose movement before I continue swinging the bell back down. I throw it away. Wiggle out the spine. Again, my style of heat and release, use that heat to wiggle it out. So after running through that progression of movement, getting a nice little bit of heat, starting to lengthen out the hamstrings, bowing through the spine. I'm using that grip, lacing my arms around to pull me forward a little more. And after a kettlebell session, definitely emphasizing the hang, because anytime you're carrying weight, you're getting a bit compressed. Downward dog is a really nice one after swinging kettlebells. Pedal out the legs. And also flipping your dog open is super refreshing, because as you can see, I'm going to flip open, and when I take my flying leg back, I'm really going to consciously play with the flying leg, and I'm going to take a couple of squeezes back. So I'm going to pump those flying toes back. I'm squeezing my glute. This is a really fun way to open the hip flexors, because they've been working hard through that sequence, and there was really no hip extension involved. So nice little counter. Open up the muscles that were working. I'm going to flip open. I'm really going to take that leg back, playing around a little bit, exploring, and then squeeze back, using the glute to open the hip flexors, reaching back, feels so nice after all that sharp movement. You can continue to do more in your workout. You can be finished for the day. Using the bell as a counterweight. It's also a nice one, just dropping and passively getting some rib cage extension as well. Loosening out after all that sharp neutral. And that's it. We'll see you more next time. Thanks. Bye.